So for immigrants who have applied for benefits, either a green card or to become a naturalized citizen of the United States, I've got some great news. Just a few days ago, USCIS, or United States Citizen Immigration Services, announced that they have reduced their backlog, which means that they're going to be processing these benefits much quicker. Now, that's not a promise, but apparently they are moving quicker now with benefits, green card, or getting your naturalized citizenship. They're moving those processes much quicker than they have been. So hopefully, if you're waiting to get a green card or you're waiting to become a naturalized citizen, you're going to see those opportunities and those benefits move a lot quicker. There you have it.
Dozens of immigration judges across the country have been fired by the Trump administration in recent months with no explanation for their dismissals. From coast to coast, nearly 4 dozen judges have lost their positions as the immigration court system faces a record backlog of more than 3 million cases. Many of those dismissed had previously worked in immigrant defense, prompting questions about whether the firings are part of the administration's broader hardline approach to immigration. We're joined now by one of those former judges, Emmett Soper. He served as a judge in Virginia. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start there. You were a longtime employee at the Justice Department, a career staff for almost 20 years. Do you believe your termination was connected in any way to your prior work defending immigrants?
I don't know exactly why I was terminated. I was terminated without any warning. The letter I received telling me that I was terminated did not give any reasons for my termination. So I'm a little bit in the dark as to why I was terminated. I had been a Department of Justice employee for a long time, and I had also been an immigration judge for a long time. They fired me without any warning nor any explanation.
What does the wave of firings mean for the backlog of cases and for those immigrants who are waiting for their day in court?
Well, the wave of unlawful firings of immigration judges is already exacerbating the backlog at the immigration courts. As judge after judge after judge gets fired unlawfully, their cases, and each judge typically handles hundreds or thousands of cases, have to be redistributed to the judges who remain on the courts. As each judge gets fired, those cases are redistributed, the backlog gets longer, people have to wait longer for their hearings, and after their hearings, they have to wait longer for their decisions.
The Trump administration, in the meantime, is approving military judges to work as temporary immigration judges. What does that shift signal to you?
It's hard to know because the military judges, to my understanding, are just getting started. We will have to see how it plays out. I have to assume that the military judges who come into the immigration courts are going to be people of integrity who try their best to do the job of being an immigration judge. But it's a very difficult job. Immigration law is very difficult to pick up. It's complicated. You don't learn it overnight. When I started as an immigration judge, I was told it would take roughly 2 to 3 years to become really fully comfortable in being a judge in immigration court, and that proved accurate. This is not something that these military judges, regardless of how hard they try, are going to be able to pick up overnight.
Do you believe the administration sees veteran judges like yourself as an obstacle to their mass deportation effort?
They may. What I can say is that I always tried very hard to treat everybody fairly and to resolve cases as I thought was appropriate under the law. I tried my best to block out all of the noise and all of the really political interference that has been going on really since the start of this administration. I think as a veteran judge, you're probably in a better position to do that than, for example, a judge who has just started. So it's a little bit hard to know what this administration thinks of veteran judges, and I was one, but they may see us as less controllable than some other judges, and this might be an issue for them. Overall, though, it's really hard to say because we really don't know, for the most part, why we were fired because we weren't told.
What's fundamentally different about what's happening now compared to previous administrations?
I think that previous administrations, the immigration courts have always had their flaws. Nobody would argue that it's a perfect system. But the leadership of the immigration courts in previous administrations, I think, were people of integrity who saw the immigration courts as neutral arbiters, as neutral decision makers, and tried their best to insulate the immigration courts from politics and the policies of whichever administration was in charge. I think that that is out the window now. I think the current administration of the immigration courts does not fundamentally see the immigration courts as neutral decision makers. I think that they see the immigration courts as a tool for this administration to advance its policy objectives.
You've said that as shocking as your firing was, you felt a bit of relief because of what you had witnessed toward the end of your tenure with ICE arrests happening right outside your courtroom. What did you see and what was it like?
Well, it was unprecedented and it was disturbing, frankly. ICE, earlier this year at the court where I served, which is in the Washington, D.C. area, began on a regular basis arresting people who were showing up for their preliminary hearings in their case. These are people who typically did not have criminal records. These are people who were not doing anything wrong. They were trying to follow the law by showing up for their immigration court hearings like they had been told they had to do. In many of these cases, ICE was waiting for the hearing to be over. Then when they left the courtroom, they were immediately arrested. And this wasn't just people showing up on their own. In some cases, these were people who came as part of a family. In some cases, following the hearing, ICE would arrest, let's say, the father in a family in front of the mother in the family and their children who had all come to court together. So in other words, ICE in the lobbies of the immigration courts, in some cases, were splitting up families. Regardless of how you feel about the law, and regardless of how you feel about immigration policy, I think that it is just impossible to defend that sort of policy on a moral or an ethical basis. This was happening on a regular basis during the last few weeks that I was at the immigration court, and I found it extremely disturbing.
Emmett Soper, thank you again for your time this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm an immigration attorney, and just the blatant disregard that this administration has had for very clear court orders has been absolutely terrifying.
What's your take on the president invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798?
You look at the history of the times we've used that law in our country, and it's not exactly, a gleaming point in our history.
Why is it important to protect people that do have the legal status, even if they did come into this country illegally?
If one person doesn't have due process, none of us do, right? I think that's always the wild thing, is people either don't know or they forget that under the Constitution, everybody has due process, not just citizens. So it's not as if, citizens are in our own special category. No, it is due process for all. So due process for losing it for one person means that it's at risk for every single one of us.
Explain what due process is. What is it?
So if you're in kindergarten, you get accused by one of your fellow kindergartners of stealing their lunch, right? Something simple. You didn't do it. And it would be entirely unfair for your teacher to just automatically assume that your fellow kindergartner was correct and punish you as a result without you ever having a chance to explain or try to say, hey, I was playing with so-and-so and clearly I didn't steal the lunch. That's due process. And it would feel incredibly unfair for you to get punished without having a chance to give your side of the story. I mean, that is a concept that even kids can understand. And perhaps they do a little bit better than our country does at the moment.
Immigration court backlogs. Why millions of cases remain unresolved? Millions are waiting for one answer. This is the Freedom Room. Welcome back. Millions of people in America are waiting for an answer that could change their entire lives. Can they stay or would they be forced to leave? For some, that answer comes quickly. For others, the wait can last for years. Welcome back to the Freedom Room, where we explore the stories behind America's biggest political, social debates. When Americans hear about the immigration crisis, they usually think about the southern borders, deportations, or illegal immigration. But there is another crisis happening inside the country, one that receives far less attention. America's immigration courts are overwhelmed by a massive backlog of unresolved cases. And behind every case is a real person, a parent waiting to stay with their children, a family seeking protection, a worker trying to build a future, or someone facing the possibility of being removed from the country. The problem is simply to describe, but the incredibility difficulty to solve. More cases are entering the system than the courts can process. And while people wait, their lives remain uncertain. They may work, raise families, and build communities in America, but still not know whether they will be allowed to stay. So how did the system reach this point? Stay tuned and keep watching more clips, because in the next part, we will take a closer look at why American immigration courts are struggling to keep up and the political debate surrounding this growing crisis. More commentary is coming up. Stay tuned to the Freedom Room. Let's watch together.
Breaking news, friends. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration can, in fact, move forward with deporting people to third countries or countries for which they have no connection or ties to. The government was trying to deport several people to South Sudan, a country for which they have no connection or ties to. That process was stopped temporarily. These men are in Djibouti waiting for an outcome with this case in federal court, based on the fact that the court believed these men should have a reasonable opportunity to argue that they might face torture or persecution in a country that they're being sent to that they have no connection to. Litigation, of course, is still ongoing, but what this means practically, friends, is that the Trump administration can quickly deport these men as well as other people who are stuck in a limbo, so to speak, in which their country is saying, their home country is saying, we don't know you, we're not going to issue a travel document, we have no proof that this individual was in fact born here and is a national of our country. What will happen now is that the Trump administration can quickly deport.
Your immigration case isn't delayed because of you. It's the system. It's overwhelmed. In 2026, immigration cases across the US are taking longer than ever. And the reason, it might shock you. Now, here are some facts for you. There are over 11 million immigration applications waiting to be processed in the system. And immigration court alone, they have 3.3 million pending cases with millions of asylum hearings still waiting. Again, we help with immigration application. Now, here are some of the biggest reasons for some cases that are delayed in 2026. Number one is record number of applications, not enough immigration officers and judges, more security reviews and policy changes, and visa limits and country caps, they're slow in approval. That means some cases like green card, asylum, work permit, they're taking months. Now, if your immigration case is still pending in 2026, comment case and when did you file. Follow for more informative information. Until next time, besties, good luck with your immigration journey.
USCIS right now and you've been waiting a while, new information has come out that 12 million immigration applications are currently pending with USCIS, which is a very big backlog of cases. Now, USCIS has had a pretty big backlog in the last few years, but it jumped by more than 2 million in just the first year of the second Trump administration. This is more than all of the 4 years of Trump's first term combined. And here's what that means for people with pending cases. First, people are waiting up to several months just to get a notice from immigration that their case has been received and it's in process. And that can be pretty stressful, especially if you have to prove to somebody that you have a pending case in the system. But here are some things you can do to be proactive. You want to start by documenting everything as if you're building your own legal file. You send your application by mail, keep track of your delivery confirmation, tracking number, timestamps, and really importantly, a complete copy of everything you submitted. That paper trail is a way to protect yourself. Also, making sure you set up your USCIS online account. You can use that to check your case status regularly. That way you don't have to depend on mail or secondhand updates. And also, if you haven't received a receipt notice, definitely follow up with USCIS. You don't want to assume that silence means everything is fine. And if your case has been sitting for a really long time, you may have the legal option of filing a writ of mandamus.
A federal judge just blocked the Trump administration's policy of arresting immigrants at immigration court. And for those who are going to immigration court, that's the biggest deal they've heard all year, because immigration court is supposed to be the place where you go to follow the law. You get a hearing notice, you show up, you stand in front of a judge, And then you ask the judge for relief. I'm going to adjust my status. I'm going to apply for asylum. I want cancellation or removal. But what was happening since Trump came? People were showing up to immigration court, and ICE was sitting there waiting in the hallway to arrest them. Trump tried to sell this as, we're arresting criminals, which is very disingenuous. Maybe some people had criminal issues, and maybe under the law, the government had the right to arrest them. But for a vast majority, that was not the story. Most people showing up to immigration court had no criminal record whatsoever. They were asylum seekers. They were people seeking relief from removal, married to U.S. citizens. Many had a path to a green card, and many were doing exactly what the law told them to do, show up to court and tell a judge, you shouldn't be deported because you're eligible for a green card today. And instead of letting the judge decide their case, the government just turned the courthouse into a trap. Because once you arrest somebody and put them in detention, you make it so hard for them to fight their case. They lose access to lawyers, lose access to documents, lose access to their family. The Trump administration moves them from jail to jail to jail. And many people finally just give up and they just self-deport. And what the federal judge says is this is a chilling effect on justice. If people showing up to court means getting arrested in the hallway, what do you think happens? A lot of them are not going to show up to court. Judges are going to order them deported in absentia. And then the Trump administration comes back and says, you see, none of these people like to follow the law. They're all criminals. They all have warrants for their arrest now. So a federal judge has stopped immigrants from being arrested in immigration court just for showing up. I'll let you know over the next few weeks if the federal government is actually following this order.
The most fascinating immigration question right now is this. What happens the day after? There will come a day, and it will come faster than anybody thinks, when Trump and the Republicans no longer have political power. And when that day comes, all of this illegal nonsense that's going on right now is going to suddenly come to a screeching halt. I'm talking about the idea that basic immigration cases cannot be processed. USCIS picking and choosing which particular cases it'll process and which ones it won't. Visas that are legal and deserve to be approved are being denied or refused under 212F. All the people and all their families impacted by these freezes, these bans, these proclamations, all this kind of illegal nonsense. What is going to happen to them when all of this is gone? The rule of law will return, and all of these cases will be processed, and everyone will get a decision on the merits. And there's going to be so much backlogs of work that needs to be done.
As y'all may know, India and Philippines suffered the worst backlog in green card processing in the United States. So the Indian American Advisory Commission came up with the idea that, hey, since there are 230,000 unused green card numbers since 1992, let's use them and disperse them between Indians and Filipinos so we can greatly and significantly reduce the backlog and wait time for people from these countries to get processed. They presented it to the United States Presidential Advisory Commission that sent it to Department of Homeland Security, and they approved the idea. This plan to recapture unused green cards are set to significantly and greatly reduce the backlog for people from these countries, and we expect that these visa numbers are going to move forward now for them. As y'all may know, India and Philippines suffered the worst backlog in green card processing in the United States. So the Indian American Advisory Commission came up with the idea that, hey, since there are 230,000 unused.
If you sue the government for delaying your case, don't worry. They are not going to deny it. I have so many people that have been waiting around for 2 years, 3 years, whether it's administrative processing, it's an N400 delayed, a 751 I-130 delayed, and they're so worried that if they go to federal court and file a lawsuit, they're like, what if the government just denies my case? Well, the government can only deny the case if there's a legitimate reason. They cannot deny the case if there's no legitimate reason. Otherwise, that's known as retaliation. And I have dealt with this issue so many times because I tell my clients, if they're going to deny the case, it's better you find out now what the reason is for the denial, because then you can prepare, whether it's citizenship, I-130, administrative processing on a visa, or something else of that sort. But in and of itself, meaning the government, you filing a lawsuit against them, is not going to just deny your case, because that's retaliatory, and you cannot retaliate against individuals or anybody who is basically filing a lawsuit. Now, you may say, how will we know? What will we do? And so forth, because we're going to get a legitimate reason. Let's say it's an N-400 that's delayed, citizenship application. What you will do is that you will get a decision on the basis of why they're denying the case. All right. But that oftentimes is something I can figure out early on, where I meet with a client, I go over their documents. If we're filing a lawsuit to say, hey, there's a high chance they're going to deny it because you made some mistakes or something else is an issue. So let's try to fix it instead of fighting the government. I've done that. So one of the things you guys need to do, if you're sitting around waiting, tired about your delayed cases, citizenship, I-130, adjustment of status, whatever it is, visa processing, administrative processing, is look at your underlying case, do a case evaluation, to figure out if it's worth it to sue the government, worth it to fight the case or not. All right, guys, thank you.
There are 3.6 million immigration cases pending in immigration courts across the United States. This is a 44% increase from last year, where there were only 2.5 million immigration cases pending. Because of the backlog, immigration cases are being scheduled out for 2030. That's right, 2030. So now President Trump's going to be in power for the next 4 years. We're going to see the realistic approach of whether or not he can facilitate millions more into the immigration removal deportation process. If you're one of the 3.6 million people who have their case pending in immigration court, make sure you have a competent immigration attorney representing you. There is a huge disparity between immigration cases that are represented by attorneys and their success rate versus those that try to go through the process by themselves.
Well, it looks like, at least sometimes, courts here in the United States act fast, and that's what happened tonight on a Saturday, causing me to stop what I was doing to share this information with you about a federal court that has blocked temporarily the enforcement of the executive order signed by the Trump administration earlier today, invoking the Alien Enemies Act. As I mentioned before, I will do a video sharing my concerns about the statutory and constitutional implications of the specific order that was signed today. But for right now, it looks like the order has been blocked. The judge issued the temporary order, which will last at least 14 days, saying that he needed to act fast because there was evidence that the administration was preparing the deportation of foreign nationals in potential violation of federal laws, but also constitutional rights. Now, I want to make sure that this is clear. The order from the judge pauses the enforcement of the executive order and therefore pauses the application of the Alien Enemies Act. That does not mean that it is found unlawful or unconstitutional. It's simply a measure to make sure that no irreparable damage is done by executing an executive order that would create a situation of illegality or unconstitutionality. We'll have to see how this plays out. Again, I am preparing a video that outlines what I fear to be unconstitutional or against federal laws about this specific executive order. For right now, that executive order has been stopped by a federal court in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. Why can't the courts keep up? Every immigration case requires time. Judges may need to review documents, examine evidence, listen to testimonies, and consider complicated legal circumstances. But then thousands or even millions of cases are waiting to be heard. The system begins to slow down. One major problem is capacity. There are only so many judges. Courtrooms, government lawyers, and resources available to process an enormous number of cases, and the political debate quickly becomes divided. Supporters of tougher immigration enforcement argue that the system must move faster. They say people who have no legal rights to remain in the United States should not be able to stay for years simply because their cases are delayed. From this perspective, a massive bad luck weakens immigration enforcement. But critics warn that speed alone cannot solve the problem. They argue that immigration cases may involve asylum claims, family circumstances, humanitarian concerns, and serious questions about a person's future. A rushed decision could have devastating consequences. And this creates the central dilemma. How do you make the system faster without making it unfair? That question has turned immigration court reforms into one of Americans' biggest political battles. But the story does not end there. Stay tuned. We'll examine the human cause of this delay and the biggest questions Americans must confront in the next commentary. Keep watching for more commentary. This is the Freedom Room. Thank you.
Okay, I just got out of federal court. We filed a new lawsuit against immigration. We are suing USCIS because they're not doing their job. Our client, Mehmet, is from Turkey. He lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He applied for asylum about 4 years ago. 4 years ago! He hasn't even gotten an asylum interview yet. He's been waiting this entire time for his asylum case to get processed, and that's not right. It's not something I'll stand for. So we went to court and we sued, and we said that this delay in the processing of his asylum case, this is not fair, it's not legal, and it won't stand. And we demanded that they interview him and make a decision on his case. Is your asylum case stuck? Are you frustrated? If so, let me know in the comments below.
Over 20 immigration judges were just fired, and more layoffs are coming. Why is he firing judges when we have 3.5 million cases sitting in immigration courts right now? Makes no sense. Well, it's all part of their policy known as One Voice. Remember that video I did a couple of days ago about them firing a bunch of State Department employees and closing US embassies? It's part of the same process. You're not supporting this administration. Your opinions are different. You out. Crazy thing is that all these people that are supposed to be deported are going to go through court hearings. The current backlog, don't expect to see anyone being deported for the next 5, 10, 15 years with this massive backlog. If you have a case in the court system, do whatever it takes to get out of there.
Immigration court update from Portland, Oregon. I just left immigration court with my client, and his final hearing, so his individual hearing, was scheduled out into the end of November 2029. You know something's not working when it takes literally over 4 years to get your day in court.
Hey guys, here's the question that is popping up. Has immigration stopped? Has U.S. immigration stopped? No, it has not stopped, guys. I know it might feel that way because the cases are slower to be approved or reviewed. Things seem to be moving at such a glacial pace. And that's by design, of course, right? We know by design this new administration is making a lot of changes. There's a lot of things happening internally at USCIS and at the State Department that we know about, and other things that we don't know about quite yet because they're going to be rolled out very soon. But for now, what you should concentrate on is the fact that your case is still there. It's still moving. They're still processing cases. As a matter of fact, we're still getting our cases reviewed and approved. Approvals are still coming in. And so
USCIS is promising a green card in 6 months or less. Last month, they published a backlog report stating that in 2023, they processed 10 million applications, which is more than they have processed in over 10 years, a full decade. So now is the time to apply for your green card. You could potentially get it in 6 months or less.
Gentle people, what's trending? You know what's trending right now? Immigration court is trending. You know what is trending? Because as soon as someone makes a mistake when they are filing those applications and they get denied, it's taking no time for them to be posted to immigration court. Now, hear what? There's absolutely no need and no reason for you to be complicating your situation like that. Not having a green card, already being undocumented, is complicated enough. Please, don't take on the trend. Get professionals like myself to get your work done. Remember, avoid the immigration court as much as you can by hiring the right professionals.
A U.S. citizen recently went to immigration court and asked the government to undo the immigration benefits her husband received after she discovered he had married her only for a green card. The court allowed the case to move forward. And if marriage fraud is ultimately proven, the consequences can be severe. A finding of marriage fraud can permanently prevent someone from obtaining immigration benefits through a future marriage petition. Why does this even matter? Because marriage-based immigration cases are being scrutinized now more closely than ever. USCIS is looking for evidence of a real marriage, a real relationship, a real joint life built together, joint bank accounts, tax returns, insurance policies, lease agreements, photographs, travel records, evidence that shows two people genuinely combined their lives together. And this is where experienced legal representation can make a real difference. Many couples have far more evidence than they realize. A good immigration attorney helps identify the strongest evidence, fills in the gaps, organizes the documentation, and presents the relationship in a way that clearly tells the story of a real and bona fide marriage. The cases that survive scrutiny are not necessarily the ones with the biggest stack of papers. They're the ones with credible evidence that proves the marriage was genuine from the beginning.
Welcome back. Let's look at the human cost and the biggest question. Behind the statistics are people whose lives are effectively placed on hold. A family may not know whether they will live next year. A parent may not know whether they can remain with their children. A worker may be unable to plan their future. And the longer the backlog grows, the more pressure builds on the entire system. The government struggles to enforce immigration laws. Immigrants wait years for decisions. Communities face uncertainty, and politicians continue to argue who is responsible. Some believe the answer is more judges and more funding. Others say the country must reduce the number of new cases entering the system. Many believe America needs both because the immigration crisis is not only about the borders, it is also about what happens after a person enters legally, or what happens when a person enters the system legally. Can America create a new system that is fast enough to enforce laws, but fair enough to protect the process? That is the challenge. Because for millions of people, the immigration court backlog is not just a government statistic. It is years of waiting, years of uncertainty, and one unanswered question. Will I be able to stay? This is the Freedom Room. If you found this discussion valuable, please subscribe, you share your thoughts in the comment section below, and you join us for another commentary tomorrow. Let's continue to explore the story shaping America. Thank you.